Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy, great to have you on the programme.
Thanks for having me.
So Australia banned social media for under 16s. Is this something that we're watching, that we're considering?
We're obviously keeping a very close eye on the way that this is playing out in Australia, because we know that young people are really struggling with the amount of time that they spend online and what is happening to them online. Through the work that we've done, that we're publishing today, the State of the Nation report about what it's like to grow up in this country in 2025, we've found serious concerns from both boys and girls about the places and spaces that used to exist in the real world having disappeared. They've retreated into their bedrooms and spend a lot of time alone online. Girls reporting that they're being targeted with explicit images, boys reporting that they're being targeted by influencers with negative attitudes towards women and girls, and we know that the action is needed. That's why we're putting £500 million behind a new generation of youth clubs, youth workers, so that every young person in this country has an adult in the real world who they trust, who they can talk to, who can help them to navigate these challenges, places to go and meaningful things to do with their lives.
I know how important the kind of youth club thing is and how important it is for communities, but you just outlined a massive problem that we know about. And you've spoken about it as well. You know, you've spoken about the addictive nature of algorithms in particular, which I think is a huge issue, and what it's doing to young people. Don't we need to be a bit more ambitious, like Australia, in blocking social media?
Well, like I said, we're watching what is happening in Australia.
Are we considering it, though? Because it's one thing to watch it. Everyone's watching it. I'm watching it. Elon Musk is watching it. Doesn't mean he agrees with it. Are we considering it?
Well, we have looked at this very closely during the course of the last 12 months because we've been surveying young people. We've had the biggest conversation government has ever had with young people. 14,000 young people took part in this process. And what we've found was serious concerns amongst them about enforceability. Are we seriously saying we're going to start prosecuting young people for looking at social media?
But that's not what they're doing in Australia. The onus and the prosecution is on the companies, not on kids and parents.
Yeah, and that's the approach that we've taken here in the UK, in that we've introduced new laws, the Online Safety Act, which is
but it's totally
putting the onus.
Well, because when you know, in the UK, you're 15.
I'm really trying to answer your question because I think this is so important to people at home. The Online Safety Act takes a similar approach, but it is a different piece of legislation. What it does is say to social media providers that they are responsible for content on their platforms that is harmful or abusive, and they need to take that down. Now, the challenge we've got as a government is to make sure that that is properly enforced. But on the separate question of whether we ban young people from using social media, there are also concerns that taking that sort of approach will push young people to other places and spaces. And what we heard most of all from young girls who took part in this State of the Nation report was that they were concerned that if boys in particular couldn't see that there was a problem with behaviours online, they wouldn't be able to see that there was a problem with those behaviours in the real world. What they asked for, above all else, was adults who they could trust, who they could go to and turn to, who had the information, the skills that they needed to be able to help young people to navigate this online world.
Because just listen to what you're saying and listen to what government's been saying. You're not considering this, are you? You're not considering.
We're not planning to introduce this.
And I just
it
think
doesn't mean that we've closed our minds to further action.
Because I just think it goes alongside the fact that you haven't decided to ban phones in schools as well. You know, is this the government that is a bit soft when it comes to the digital sphere?
No, we're operating in the real world, and this is the first strategy that this country has had for young people since before the iPhone was invented. We're putting £500 million behind it, but we're taking the world as it is. We've got young people who are online. They've grown up entirely as an online generation for the first time, and they are not only the most connected generation in history, but they're also the most isolated. That is the stark challenge that we're having to confront. So giving every young person in this country places to go, things to do, and people who they trust, who can help them to navigate the complexities of growing up today is, I believe, the right approach.
Can I ask you about comments that President Trump made overnight about the London mayor? He said he's a horrible mayor. He's an incompetent mayor. He's a horrible, vicious, disgusting mayor. I think he's done a terrible job. I mean, is Sadiq Khan living rent-free in President Trump's head?
I mean, I strongly disagree with those comments. I think Sadiq is doing a really good job and has been at the forefront of providing affordable housing, improvements to transport. Transport in London, you know, I say this as somebody who lives in the north of England, we would love to have some of the transport infrastructure that Sadiq has overseen. He's dealing with, you know, he's been one of the people who has set up multi-agency approaches to help young people with knife crime, gang violence that we're learning from in government. So I strongly disagree. Yes, he is. Yes.
Why haven't we heard anything from Keir Starmer on it, or have I missed it? Has he said anything to defend Sadiq Khan?
Well, I'm sure that he would, because Sadiq is doing a really good job.
I'm just asking.
And we work very closely with him, and we learn from some of the things that he's been doing in London. So I know the Prime Minister would disagree with those comments. The reason I ask is because, you know, these are quite punchy comments about someone, right? Horrible, vicious, disgusting. You wouldn't expect to see something from the Prime Minister, wouldn't you? Well, I'm sure that if you asked the Prime Minister if he was sitting in this studio today, he would say what I've said, which is that Sadiq is doing an incredibly good job for London. We're proud of our mayors, and we're proud of the fact that this government has handed more power to mayors and councils than any other, and will continue to do so, because you've got different approaches being taken in different parts of the country, and that is the right thing to deliver for people, whether you live in London, wherever you live in this country. We're seeing some amazing work and innovation.
Just finally, Baroness Longfield is taking over as chair of the Grooming Gangs inquiry. I knew a Workers' Children's Commissioner. She's obviously got a kind of long history working with children, but there are concerns about the fact that she was a Labour peer, right? I just want to read the words of Fiona Goddard. This is a victim. She was abused by a gang in Bradford while she was living in a children's home. And she said the fact they've chosen someone so closely connected with the Labour government raises serious concerns over how impartial and independent this inquiry will be. I mean, it's very difficult, isn't it, to go forward with an inquiry unless it has the confidence of the victims?
Well, I've known Anne Longfield for over 20 years. I first came across her when I was working at the Children's Society more than 20 years ago, and she is a fierce advocate for children and young people. She's made herself deeply unpopular at times because she speaks truth to power. I think she's the right person, but I really recognise not just what Fiona Goddard's just said, but what a lot of survivors of grooming gangs feel. They've been let down repeatedly by people in positions of power, and their trust has to be earned. But I'm confident that Anne Longfield is the right person to do that.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Lisa Nandy, speaking to us there. Thank you.